Welcome to this week's episode of Utopia. Tomorrow is Earth Day, a commemoration created in 1970 by a group of people concerned about the lack of consciousness for protecting our planet. In honor of Earth Day, we were lucky enough to meet a living legend, Brock Evans. Sean King has more about one of America's environmental pioneers.
Every year on April 22nd, Americans rally together and celebrate our shared desire to take care of our planet and the health of the species that live here, including us humans. Earth Day began in 1970 in America, and the celebration has grown to include 193 countries across the globe. Over time, the focus of Earth Day has shifted. For many, Earth Day is about making good consumer choices for purchasing sustainable foods, products, and services. For many of us, this has become a part of our psyche and part of the modern American consciousness. But Earth Day was started out of a need to enact environmental laws that protected both the planet and our own health. Before Earth Day, there were very few environmental laws protecting the air, waters, and lands we all love here in our beautiful America. The very first Earth Day demonstration created a grassroots movement that crisscrossed the country and ultimately forced Congress to pass many of America's environmental laws. But it didn't happen overnight. It was led by men and women who wanted more from their country. Men like Brock Evans.
What I sometimes tell skeptical audiences is, well, pull out a map sometime, any highway map, and look at what's on the map, and look for the green areas on the map with the national parks and state parks and wilderness areas and so on.
Brock Evans has spent his lifetime fighting to protect our planet. He was there in D.C. when Earth Day was created and spent another 45 years working to save parts of the U.S. and pass environmental laws.
Each one of those wasn't given to us by some politician or anything else. They were given by one person or a band of people who loved that place and fought for it. There's a beautiful human story behind every one of those 250 million acres we protected already, and they can do it too. I have never been yet in a battle that wasn't considered a lost cause when it started. You just keep on going and don't worry about that.
Brock cites one of the founders of Earth Day, Senator Gaylord Nelson, as an early inspiration for his lifelong mission. But his upbringing was just like many of ours.
I was raised in an ordinary suburb of Columbus, Ohio a long time ago, and I would cry when they cut down trees in the vacant lots and things like that. But I would say the seminal event for me was I went to the student employment office and got a job at a place called Glacier National Park. And I'll never forget the next morning stepping off the train at East Glacier National Park, and there were the great mountain peaks rising right out of the prairies and the ice pure creeks pouring down from the heavens and the glaciers and the sweet smell of the pine forest, and it was like some old lost chord was plucked inside me. I didn't even know it was there, and it's been singing ever since. I graduated from law school. I moved west to Seattle because it had two mountain ranges, one on either side. I'd never been there before. And salt water in the middle sounded pretty good to me. That's where I wanted to live. And so I started climbing mountains right away, and I felt I was in paradise. And it was wonderful. But after about a summer or two, I did have another kind of aha moment when I realized I came across a clear cut in this magnificent forest of trees 8 feet thick and 200 feet high. And I said, they can't do this. This is public land. And I realized they were logging off public land, so I got very unhappy. I left a thriving law practice, and I became so active to try to save these places. My friend said, you ought to join that Sierra Club down in San Francisco. They're all powerful. And so I never heard of them before, but I joined them, and they became pretty impressed. And I ended up spending all my nights and all my weekends and half my time at the office doing conservation work, trying to save these places. And finally the Sierra Club said, hey, we want you to work for us. And so I left my law practice and went to work as the Northwest representative in Northwest North America for the Sierra Club. Northwest, I thought, meant, lucky me, the 4 Northwest states and, Idaho, Montana, and so on, meant Northwest North America, North Pole to California, anything I wanted. And I sure as heck wanted it all, British Columbia too, and Yukon and so on.
One of Brock Evans' first environmental campaigns was an effort to protect an area few people had ever heard of on the Snake River.
A place called Hell's Canyon, deeper than the Grand Canyon by 1,000 feet, and a much bigger river and so on. And I never heard of it before, but Sierra Club said, Evans, take a look into that. They're going to build a dam there, see if you can stop it. And I was very gloomy because I knew that there was an issue in the Supreme Court about building that dam, but it wasn't whether or not, it was only who got to build it. But a Supreme Court opinion came down and the court said, we're remanding this case so that you can decide, it needs to be decided whether to build this. That's heresy in those days in the Northwest. It was heresy to challenge any dams as well as was to logging. So anyhow, I filed the first lawsuit until we stopped it. The Sierra Club, after about 5 or 6 years, asked me if I would go back to Washington to be the head lobbyist there, and this was in the 1970s, and they said, are you kidding? Leave a place like Seattle for Washington, D.C.? No way. But they kept on endless pressure, endlessly applied, and finally I thought, well, okay, maybe we'll try it for a year or two. But I realized once I was there that if you want to save places in this country, in America right now, the best way to save the places you love is to get a law passed.
When Brock Evans first moved to D.C., words like environmentalist and phrases like sustainable living were not commonly in use. And he soon proved himself to be a force of nature. Brock Evans helped pass a series of environmental laws and legislation that protected many iconic American landscapes, including North Cascades National Park and many large wilderness areas in Alaska. And here in Utah, Brock helped pass legislation that protected some of Utah's most iconic landscapes, including Canyonlands National Park, the High Uintas Wilderness Area, and was involved in helping to designate Escalante National Monument.
Don't go anywhere. Utopia will be right back.